everyone. I'm Noam. I'm from StarkWare. We're making the network Starknet. It's an ZK L2, and we're opening up staking this month. So our staking is actually pretty simple. If you wish boring, you put in stake in our token, and you get rewards. So I'm going to use the first part of my talk to actually give some, high-level principles, abstract thoughts, as befitting a researcher, about the financial quantities involved. How much do you expect or should you expect in staking to mint, to give rewards, and so on. And again, this is going to be a very high-level view. And in the second part, I'm going to tell you exactly what we're doing, and I hope I have time for both. Okay, so basically the money that flows in a system, you get some money from your users, these are the transaction fees, and you mint some money, and all that needs to go to the operators, to the stakers, the people who operate your system. And if you're missing MEV here, well, it's a type of a fee, right? Maybe ill-designed, maybe ill-defined, but you're taking money from your users, so it's a fee in this kind of a dichotomy that I'm having here. So what I'm trying to do here is trying to, to tell you how I would think about the quantities involved. How much fees do you want to take? How much minting do you want to do? And how much do you want to actually pay? How much APY do you want to pay to your stakers? What's a way to think about these questions? So first of all, from the point of view, how much fees should you take? Well, it depends what's your goal. If your goal is, as we like to think about it, to increase the value added by your network, to actually provide as much service as you can to your users, provided, of course, taking costs into account, then economic theory tells us exactly the correct fee that you want to take. The optimal fee that you would like to take is basically the marginal cost of a transaction. If someone comes in and his transaction costs another cent to actually operate everything, that's what you should take from him. If you really want to grow your network as much as possible, if you want to give as much as possible utility to the world, to your users, and so on. So that's a pretty simple answer, and that's only the marginal cost, only what the extra cost of this extra transaction, given that everything else is already in place. Of course, what this misses is all the fixed costs to how do you set up your system that it can even serve a single transaction, not to mention lots of transactions. And there are lots of fixed costs in order that we are required for that. And the major one, any way you look at it, is a capital cost. If you're a proof of stake, at least for a proof of stake network like we are, so if you're a proof of stake network, people need to put in their money to actually guarantee the correct operation of the system. And that money could be used elsewhere. They could buy stocks, they could buy bonds. So you need to pay them the correct amount, basically, to compensate for this other alternative use. And the amount that you need to pay them is sort of like a financial quantity, right? It's the amount of interest you would get in a similarly risky investment opportunity. Okay, so I think it's useful sometimes to actually try to have a common denominator between the fees and the staking rewards that are usually counted very differently. And one way that I like to do it is just count everything as how much you're paying per transaction. So once you know how much is staked, what is the APY, how much are you giving your yield to your stakers, and your TPS, you can just see, okay, how much is each transaction costing me in terms of the capital, what I need to pay what I need to pay to my stakers. And you can do this calculation easily, just do the multiplication and dividing. And for example, if you're looking at, let's say, hypothetical middle of the line L2 with, let's say, 10 TPS and $1 billion staked, and if you're giving them, let's say, about 5% interest, all of these are sort of, imaginary but sort of typical numbers for this kind of thing, then you get 60 cents per transaction, which should strike you as being relatively large to what you would like to charge from your users. You would like the fees to be significantly lower than that. So staking is a big money. You can do the same kind of calculation for networks, for example, for Ethereum, and you get maybe $8 per transaction. That's the capital cost. And the question is, do you want your fees on Ethereum to be $8 or you want them to be much less? Of course, if we have congestion, they have to go up. But if we don't have congestion, probably we don't want the fees to be as high. We want them to be lower, let's say like they are now, $1. So how are you going to get the needed money for capital costs? Well, that's what everyone does. It's very simple. You mint new money, and that's the main advantage of why you have a token. This is the main advantage to the network. I'm not talking maybe you want to get rich or something like that, but in a principled way, this is what the network actually uses the tokens for. So what does that mean? Where is this money coming from? Basically, the token holders are paying for that, and they're doing it for a good reason. If they want their network, right? You have a token of a network. If you want your network to grow, to be as, to have as much activity as possible, you really need, these are the operating costs, and you need to do that. Okay? So that's the basic idea. So how much, now let's translate this into money, and let's see how much do you need to, what's going on there. So the basic equation, if you wish, equation is a truism, basically. The amount of new mintings that you get is basically the annual reward you get for stakers, minus fees, but I'm going to ignore that for simplicity, and times the staking percent. And because if you basically take whatever minting and split it among your stakers, this is the equation that you're going to get. Okay, so that's very simple. Now, what's interesting about this equation is that we can see what determines each one of these numbers, or at least two of these numbers, and then you get the third one. So the staking amount, the staking percent, basically that basically gives you your security. The whole point of proof of, proof of stake is that the fact that people have money locked into the system gives you security, because if they really misbehave, that money is going to be taken. So there's going to be some limit to how much they can basically, cheat in the system and somehow extract value by misbehaving, and you want the amount of money that they locked in to be larger than that, so they won't be able to actually make a profit. That's the type of security we're thinking about from an economic point of view. And as opposed to the, computer science kind of security that really understands the supermajority, minority, 1/3 plus 1, and so on, I would say that we don't completely understand what exactly goes into this economic security. So we have some kind of idea. We know that the more money is at stake, the higher the stake needs to be. The bigger the value, the fully diluted value or the TVL or something like that of your network, the higher you need the stake to be. What fraction of the TVL or of the fully diluted value you will need staking is not completely clear. It depends on a bunch of things. And what can the bad guys do, how easy it to do that, and so on. Maybe for ZK kind of networks, it's less than what you need for other kind of networks. So we know that different networks have different numbers, between 20% and 80%, I would say, of the total amount of tokens is standard. But what exactly is the level of security that you need? That's a key question, and that needs to be determined by the network. If you want to run a network, you want to have real security, you have to figure out what is the amount of stake that you want, because that is your security. Now, the reward to stakers is actually not something that you get to choose. Indirectly, you get to choose it, of course, but the point is that's a financial quantity. So your stakers are going to have other financial alternatives, and you basically need to pay them whatever the market gives. Okay? Of course, taking into account your risk, which means, maybe perceived inflation, maybe riskiness, riskiness of the token value, and lots of other things. But that's basically a financial quantity. So once you have these two numbers, you've figured out what you want, you have the other things set by the market, basically all these numbers basically get values, and that's the way we like to think about it. Okay, so all that was a high-level point of view, and now what we're doing, I'm going to describe. So the only interesting thing I would say about our staking is that we're doing it early. So we're not yet completely decentralized. We're on the journey to decentralization. We're still doing our own sequencing and proving. And it will take, maybe half a year, maybe a little bit more for full decentralization of our platform. But our thought was that we want to start staking very early, because there's a whole socio-economic kind of thing that needs to be settled down across the whole community. And we want to actually price that, verify that, make sure that that works correctly with the correct amount of security that we want, in parallel to the rest of the technological work that we're doing, decentralizing the platform. So in the first stage, you basically put in your money, you're supposed to run a node, a full node, and you get rewards. As we progress, you'll have to do more and more and more as a staker. And at the end of the road, you're going to have to, of course, do everything to operate the whole decentralized network. So the timeline is basically as follows. We finalized the governance vote on this proposal on the first stage in September. It's now running on testnet from October. And later this month, hopefully, it's going to be live on mainnet, and you're actually supposed to, you validator guys, hopefully will put your money in and get some money out. And again, the way that we're doing it, of course, you can be a staker directly, run and operate a node. We also have enshrined delegation. So we have a delegation thing built inside. So if you're a small staker, you can delegate to a real staker that's actually going to run the network. We're not going to do liquid staking ourselves. We're leaving that to our stakers that can do whatever kind of innovation they want to do in the field of liquid staking, real staking, whatever clever and fancy thing they got to do. This is not something that we're doing ourselves, but we're sort of weakly encouraging it. So the financial parameters are going to be like this. The minimum amount for staking is pretty low, 20K Starks. That's less than $10,000 today. And delegation is no minimum number. Entry is immediate. You have like a 21-day latency before you can pull your money out to make sure that you didn't destroy anything and give us time to catch you if you did anything bad. And during the first stage, neither StarkWare, the company, is going to delegate it to stake, nor the foundation with its pool of Starks is going to stake, nor locked tokens will be allowed to stake. So this is the first stage. We want to make sure that it's all going outside, nothing in the inner circle. So how much are you going to make? So we're going to basically, we're doing basically the same kind of thing that Ethereum does, and it basically lets the market figure out the numbers. So we're going to have this, formula that grows. The amount of minting that we're going to do grows as the square root of the staking rate, of the fraction that is staked. What is important about this is that this is a sublinear function, which means that the more stakers come in, the less each one of them is making. So that gives you some kind of way to actually get a market equilibrium, if you wish, the correct amount of staking, because if too many people come in, they're going to get lower rewards. If not enough people stake, they're going to get higher rewards, so you're going to get the right sign. So the graph that you see here basically depicts what it is. The graph goes all the way up to 20% staking because we only have something like 18% circulating according to the rules that I've explained. So if we get a quarter basically of only a quarter staked from available staking, you get something like 7%. If it's less than a quarter, you get more than that. If it goes up to something like, I don't know, half of the available staking, it goes up to, the reward goes down to something like 5%, and so on. So hopefully, with this kind of curve, we'll get a reasonable amount of security, what we deem to be the correct, what we deem to be acceptable. Not too little security that we're afraid, and not too high security that we pay too much. Okay? And if not, there's a monetary committee that basically at later stages with the whole process can basically adjust the constants here to make this the right amount of security that we want. And by the way, if you notice, the blue line at the bottom depicts how much minting we're doing. And as you can see, it's very small according to this formula. It's less than, I don't know, 0.5%, even if every available token basically is staked at this point. Once we get to higher level fraction of circulating tokens, then this can go a bit higher, but we definitely are not thinking about more than 1 or 2% inflation. So that's about it, and thank you.